Most people, when they think of iterations, do something like this. They have a winner, and then they simply swap out the imagery or messaging, or they just test the format to death. And don't get me wrong, this is not a bad place to start, but there are so many more iterations that you can use to get the most juice out of your top performers. So in this lesson, I'm going to show you my favorite iterations to make on your top performing creatives. These can also be used to increase the performance on creative that maybe you didn't do as well. And my big tip here when you're looking to make iterations on your top performing creatives is this. When looking at any top performing creative, you need to zero in on the thing that is likely having the biggest impact on performance. Oftentimes, this is going to be the imagery, the messaging, and potentially even the format. And a good way to determine which one of these variables is actually doing the heavy lifting, I encourage you to look back at your creative test. Ideally, you should be running at least 3 variations for each creative test. So say you were testing a statistics image ad. You should be running 3 different variations of this. Kind of like Mott and Bow here. So let's say this ad creative is the winner. What do we think is the biggest variable here? Is it the messaging, which is mostly a statistic, right? Is it the imagery, a nice butt shot? Or is it a format? It's definitely not just because it's an image, right? But the type of image this is a static space image. Maybe that's the variable. So let's dive a little deeper on the metrics to figure out what's going on here. So let's assume the creative test as a whole performed well, and every single variant had KPIs that were coming under target. So they were reaching the right CPA and ROAS goals. If something like this happens, it's safe to assume that the format as a whole is doing well. So this could be a signal, hey, do more static space images, right? But let's dig even deeper. Let's say one of these tests is performing significantly better than the others. Imagery-wise, they're super similar, so this likely isn't the variable. However, this messaging point seems to be unique and really struck a chord with the users. And this tells me that we should try testing this messaging not only on other static-based images, but on other formats as well. In this way, we can continue testing to really know for sure if this messaging point is a winner. The reality is that you're going to have to test your messaging across several different variants of ads to really get a definitive learning. So let's dive into all the potential iterations we could do here. Number 1, yes, you have to zoom in on that potential biggest variable. And my big flag here is, especially if you find that you have a messaging point that's doing really well, I urge you to try testing it in other formats. So if you find a piece of messaging that worked really well on a static ad, I would highly recommend trying that in video form, particularly in the hook. To go a little further, you can also try this with a post-it note for image or video. And another thing that could be interesting to test here is try combining that statistic or that messaging point with a little more social proof. You could use a social proof ad or even partner with a creator in the green screen technique and have them overlay on top of that actual ad creative. The second types of iterations you can do are what I like to call add-ons. So you could literally add these on to any image or video potentially. And I've seen all these small things actually improve performance from time to time. Number 1, you can add social proof. Some of my favorite ways to do this are to indicate a number of 5-star reviews, indicate a number of users. So really zoning in on some more of those social numbers, right? Adding more data to this mix. You can also add a testimonial. There's so many different ways you can add testimonials. You can simply do a screenshot of Google review, of an ad comment, or even just add the testimonial as text overlay. And if you happen to find a few golden nugget reviews, you can go ahead and put that right on top of the static. I've seen that working really well recently, or even utilizing that in the hook of your ad creative. Another add-on is press. Sometimes even adding the logo here helps a lot. You can also add an element of before and after. And if you're not testing statistics, this is another good one to add in, as well as bullet points. You can add bullet points onto already existing statics, but I also really like utilizing this in UGC content or video content. The third thing you can do, particularly with winning images, is turning it into a carousel. In fact, if you happen to have a series of top performing images, you should just put them all into a carousel. And another one of my secret tips is you should actually take all 10 of your top performing creatives and put them into a carousel. This includes images, this includes videos, kind of like this array example. The way I like to look at this is it's kind of like a super dynamic creative testing ad. And yes, you can actually use multiple different kinds of formats inside of a carousel. The fourth one, probably the easiest one, is if you see something working, put a head bar on it. I often see this works particularly well with video. Number 5, let's stay on easy street for a little bit. I want to go back to some of those easy iterations. Number 1, if you want to do a simple image swap, here are a few that I suggest. Try testing images that include humans or the human element and some that don't. This is a big flag actually for apparel brands. And also if you do have a certain person in your ad creative, simply try swapping them out. Same goes for video. Additionally, I would also take a look at the atmosphere in which your image or your video was shot. So if you have a winning creative that was shot on the street, consider also shooting it in the house, at a different public location, or even in a studio or a plain product background. And for the easy messaging swaps, my big suggestion here is to really tap into the human desires if possible. So really try thinking about what's most important to your consumer and try getting it from the angle of another human desire that you maybe haven't explored before, or double down on the one that's working. All right, the next iterations are mostly for videos. And number 7 is a little bit more about the script. It's to keep the same format, but try testing different problems and different problem agitators within your script. Again, this is why I have my creators film multiple hooks when they're working with us so that we can try coming at the angle from different problems. And you can also take that a step further and have them film multiple types of problem agitators. Another easy variation for video, particularly with UGC, is if you find that a certain script really works, simply try it with another creator and then utilize all the different clips from the multiple creators and also test a compilation. And number 9, let's just zoom in on the different hook iterations you should be testing. Number 1, try a green screen hook. If you find that you have a creative that's really knocking it out of the park, I would try a green screen iteration. I would try a TikTok response bubble iteration. I would also try a split screen variation and also try figuring out how you can do an oddly satisfying hook as well. Again, some easy ways to do this are with a reverse loop as well as some texture play. The next one is zoning in more on messaging. So if you found that a messaging point is really doing well for a lot of your creatives, I would actually try to see if you could build upon that story a little bit. I think this iteration from Hexclad was a really great example on how they built upon Gordon's original ads right here. The next iteration, try calling out your audience in that hook. I've really found that it helps Meta zone in on your right target audience if you actually call out that specific target demographic in the hook. So you can simply try using this with one of your top performing video. So you can simply try this with one of your top performing video creatives already. Number 12, probably the most difficult one, cumbersome, but very fun, highly recommend. Add a pet, particularly in the hook. There are some brands and some industries that really benefit from the addition of having pets in their advertising. Now, a few reasons why is about, I think it's like 46% of Americans are pet owners and 9 out of 10 Americans see pets as a part of the family. Pet people identify with other pet people. So even if you have a beauty brand or a jewelry brand, something that doesn't even have to do with pets, I would try adding pets into your advertising. I've actually seen it improve performance a number of times. And the final one, take your best performing video creative and turn it into a post-it note video. Simply take that script, put it on the post-it notes, and have someone do a VO on it. I would actually try having a voiceover iteration and a non-voiceover iteration and just have some music. I've seen both work pretty well, and that kind of test often leads to really surprising learnings. And that's it. If you have an iteration that you love doing and it's not here, be sure to put it in the comments. All right, see you in the next lesson.